Minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the webinar. We're here in central London today at the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce in the UK. And I have to say, we have Portuguese levels of heat today here in central London. It's about 32 degrees outside. We've got Portuguese sunshine. We can't wait to tell you more. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us on this very hot day. And I'm Christina Hipsley from the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce here in the UK. And today's webinar is entitled Update on the latest residency and tax proposals from the new Portuguese government. Many of you will know that a new Portuguese government was elected a couple of months ago, and the new rules are appearing thick and fast. So we're going to update you. Now, today is Wednesday, the 26th of June, 2024. And I'm Christina, as many of you already know, and the Portuguese Chamber of Commerce here in the UK organises the Moving to Portugal shows and seminars every year in the UK and in Ireland. Just a quick reminder, our next live show will be in central London on the 17th of October. And if you'd like to come along, please go to our website, movingtoportugal.org.uk. As you can see the format here on the photo, but we also have lots of our speakers with their exhibition stands who will be happy to talk to you. In fact, I think hopefully all three of our presenters today will be there on the day with us. So do come along and meet them. Now, a little bit of housekeeping, just quickly. The webinar today will be around 50 minutes long, around 45 minutes for presentations from our speakers, and then our very popular question and answer session. So as we go along, please put your questions in the Q&A box and we will try and answer them all. And also, thank you to all our listeners and viewers who have already sent in questions. Fantastic. We've got lots of material, which our panelists are ready to answer. So bear with us. And also to remind you that the link to download all the presentations, we'll give it to you at the end. So don't worry about taking notes. And the webinar will be put on our YouTube channel later this evening, and you'll all get a link to that as well. So yeah, no problem if you've missed it or you want to send a recording to a friend, you'll have it shortly. So now, the aim of today's webinar is frankly to explain the latest proposed updates on residency and tax in Portugal. So we're going to be talking briefly at the beginning about revisions to Portugal's NHR tax regime. And we're also going to talk about the different visa options for those of you wanting to move to Portugal. So an overview, and then we'll also update you on how the government is processing visa applications, because I know that this is an issue some of you are facing. So Catarina will give you a little bit, one of our speakers will give you a little bit of an update on that. And then after that, we'll be talking about the golden visa, clarifying questions and doubts about it for you. And two of our presenters will talk about investment funds, some investment funds they're involved in that qualify for the golden visa. Now, let me introduce you to each of our speakers very briefly before we get into the slides. Our first speaker is Catarina Sardinha from DCART Portugal. Now, Catarina is the in-house lawyer and senior business manager at DCART Portugal, which is a UK-based group. So the HQ is here in the UK. It was set up in 1988, but they've actually got 7 offices all across Europe, 2 in Portugal. It's a major place for them. And Catarina works for DCART Portugal. But what DCART does is most of their clients are international, individuals or corporates. And DCART sets up solutions for them cross-border for immigration, tax and accountancy. And particularly, they will help provide a soft landing for businesses starting up in Portugal, in the UK, and also individuals moving around their network. And Catarina will be taking us through the latest updates to the NHR tax regime and talking about the different kinds of visas that you can apply for, the residency visas that you're all interested in. So she'll be on stage very shortly. And our second speaker, I would like to introduce you to Michael Maxwell. Now, Michael's the founder and CEO of Portugal Panorama. Now, this is a platform for traditional investment options in Portugal, but it's also he's also a specialist in investments and funds that comply for the Golden Visa, that are eligible for the Golden Visa. So Portugal Panorama is his flagship fund, and he'll be telling us a little bit about that as well. Highly experienced in Portugal, Michael is. We know him for a long time. And then our third speaker, who's another very important member of the chamber with us, is Alex Onona from Vida Capital. Now, Alex is a partner at Vida Capital in Portugal. Now, Vida Capital, as he'll tell you, is a Golden Visa eligible fund. And they have a particular focus, which is turning around distressed hotels in Portugal. Big business, lots of hotels in Portugal, as you all know. And Alex will be talking about some of the projects that they've completed and also new projects that they have in the pipeline, which I think you'll find interesting. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I will ask our first speaker, Catarina Sardinha from DCARP Portugal, to give us an overview of some of the new tax regimes and the new announcements from the Portuguese government. Catarina, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. As Christina said, we will be making an overview of the latest changes that have been announced by the current government, both from a visa perspective and also from a tax perspective. I will also give you an overview of the various types of visas that exist in Portugal. And then the rest of the presentation will be mostly on the Golden Visa. Next slide, please. So I don't know who is here on this webinar, but I believe that probably there are many people who are interested in knowing what's happening currently in Portugal. The reason being that Portugal in the last couple of years has had a change in government. So the change is actually quite recent, March 2024. The reality is that there were some issues with the Portuguese immigration authorities that the reality is that they were never tackled by the prior government. And so from a Portuguese perspective, what I would like to convey today is that, and also going back to my experience, because I've been doing this for many, many years, is that we can see that the current government, which is from a different party, really is hands-on in many, many of the issues that we had in Portugal, including immigration issues. And so this slide is really is regarding that. So the new government is in place since March 2024. In the beginning of this month, they announced an action plan for the immigration issues that were very generic. They were not only regarding golden visas or specific visas, they were very generic. And so this government really came into place knowing that they had an issue that had to be tackled. The first concrete measure that they presented was to end the expression of interest, which is a very specific visa for, it's really a work permit and has very specific technicalities. But the reality is that this type of visa was somehow clogging the system. The other measures were actually presented yesterday, and I really received them with very, very hopefully, in the sense that they have extended the validity of the current residency permits until the 30th of June next year. This was an issue for current residency permit holders because renewals were not opening, and they wanted to know what would happen. So these residency permits the validity is automatically extended until the 30th of June 2025. And for me, the best news was that they are going to put in place a task force specifically dedicated to tackle the current processes that are pending applications. So they are hiring 300 individuals so that the purpose is really to speed up all of the pending applications that are currently in the system. So for me, these are very good news. And really makes me look at all of the visa applications in a more hopeful way, in the sense that they will move more quickly. Next slide, please. So those were the news regarding the visa, which I know that probably some of the people attending this webinar may be wondering about and may be raising questions at the end. From a tax perspective, so as many of you may know, Portugal has become a very popular destination, and so the government felt the need to terminate tax incentives, personal tax incentives that existed, which is the old NHR regime, which I will also talk about in a minute. And so they decided to terminate the old NHR, but they approved a new version of the NHR, which is slightly reduced, which is called the NHR 2.0. And so anyone applying for a visa now can apply for this personal income tax regime, which is the NHR 2.0. In terms of the activities, so people who still work either for a company or independently. So the number of activities that is available within this type of regime has narrowed, and it's here on the slide. The government has allowed the Madeira and Azores, which are two archipelagos of Portugal, to take this list of activities and broaden it. So basically, we are waiting for the two regions to locally decide how they will broaden the scope of these activities. So this regime is available for anyone who becomes a tax resident in Portugal and has not been resident in Portugal for the last 5 years. Next slide, please. The flat tax rate is still 20% of personal income tax for the employment performed in Portugal. As I said, the list of activities has reduced. We will probably have more news throughout the year once the Madeira and the Azores, the two regions, have decided how to broaden the activities. In this regime, there are no exemptions for pensions. This is the biggest, I would say, the biggest difference from the old NHR. And so pensions are no longer taxed at a fixed tax rate of 10%. And Portugal has quite I would say, aggressive progressive tax rate, which can go up to 48%. Other exemptions are still applicable, such as income relating to employment from abroad, self-employment from abroad, foreign rental income, dividends, and so on and so forth. What I would suggest is anyone interested in this, we can have a meeting one-on-one, because the NHR really goes into specifically how, the type of income each individual has. So I would recommend having a one-on-one meeting for this specific issue. Next slide, please. So going into what is the old NHR, and there was some questions about this regime. So this regime ended, as I've said already, but there is a grandfathering regime. And what does it mean? It means that whoever applied in the past, obviously, will continue to benefit from it. Anyone who became a tax resident in Portugal until 31st December 2023 will also benefit from the NHR. And this is where I think some questions came in individuals who may become tax resident in Portugal in 2024 may benefit if they comply with one of these criteria, which is initiate their visa application last year, secure a promissory or an employment or secondment employment dated by the 31st December 2023, or have a promissory purchase and sale agreement of a property or lease agreement of a property located in, by the 10th of October 2023, or have their children enrolled in school, or you may have a family where the main applicant is already tax resident in Portugal, so the remaining householders can also apply for the old NHR. You can ask any questions that you may have, and we can tackle those at the end. Next slide, please. The old NHR tax benefits, this is just an overview. The flat tax rate is again 20%. The activities have a bigger range than the current one. Exemption from Portugal personal income tax for income such as dividends, royalties, interest, foreign rental income, and this is where it really is the big difference, which is the special tax rate of 10% for pensions, which is no longer available with the current NHR 2.0. Next slide, please. There are other aspects to take into consideration for anyone wanting to relocate to Portugal, which is we have no wealth tax. It can be combined with any of these NHR, depending on which is the situation of each individuals. So we have what is called stamp duty, which is really only applicable for assets located in Portugal, and not all assets, specific assets like properties, and parents, spouses, and children will always be tax exempt in Portugal, even if the assets are located in Portugal. Also, there are some, and these capital gains are available for any Portuguese. So these are not only for these individuals becoming resident here, is no capital gains on the sale of a property that you declare to be your permanent residency under certain conditions. Next slide, please. So I was also asked to make a bit of an overview of the overall visas that exist in Portugal. So next slide, please. So as you will see, this is a bit of an overview. So why are Portuguese visas so interesting, let's say? The reality is that anyone having a Portuguese visa, it's irrelevant the type of visa, will be able to travel within the Schengen area. They are allowed to make what we call a family reunion, which means that they can bring their family to live in Portugal under the main application. They can live and work in Portugal. They can benefit, if they live in Portugal, from our education and health system. And in my experience, what many clients really want is to apply for Portuguese citizenship. And so I can also say that, considering that we began the Golden Visa program and other visa applications many years ago, we've been very successful in obtaining citizenship for clients who have completed their 5-year residency program. And so, yes, this is available and it works. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of some of the visas that exist in Portugal at the moment. And I think this comparison is good in the sense that it really gives you a good idea of what fits you. So I won't go into the Golden Visa because we will talk about it later. And really, it fits people who want a residency permit but don't want to live in Portugal. The reason being that all of the other visas, except for the golden visa, require people to actually relocate to Portugal. Because the reality is that these visas, the D2, the D7, the digital nomad, they really require people to live in Portugal. So the visa is issued for the period of 2 years. And within those 2 years, as you can see at the bottom, they cannot be out of Portugal for more than 6 consecutive months or 8 intermittent months. And that is the biggest difference from the golden visa, which if clients decide to go that route, they only have to come to Portugal 7 days per year. And in addition to that, they do not become tax resident in Portugal. All of the other visas, really, because you have these stay requirements, you become tax resident in Portugal. So I will just leave this schedule for people to look at it, also because this will be distributed. And if you have any questions, we can also look at them afterwards. Next slide, please. So we now go into the golden visa program itself. Next slide, please. So the golden visa program also changed last year, mostly because the Portuguese government wanted to tackle housing issues in Portugal. And so basically what happened was they took out of the program the investment into properties. The reality is that, in my opinion, the program is still quite interesting in the sense that the main route being the investment into funds, which under the law, they are called collective investment organisms, but at the end of the day, they are funds. The requirement is to invest 500,000 euros into one or more funds. People can distribute the investment into various funds. The funds need to comply with certain criteria, which I'm sure that Michael and Alex will address, which is the investment has to be 60% into Portuguese companies with the head office in Portugal. The funds have to have a timeline of at least 5 to 6 years. And currently, they cannot invest directly or indirectly into properties. Next slide, please. So this is the structure of the fund. It's very simple. The fund will have many investors who will subscribe the fund units. Then the fund will have an SPV, a company that will then invest into whatever is the specific fund, what they have decided to invest into. Next slide, please. Venture capital funds, really also going back to what is my experience, are very attractive in the sense that, and have been even for golden visas, because people who do not live in Portugal will not be subject to withholding tax on the payments done by the funds. And so they have become a golden visa investment vehicle, very interesting. Next slide, please. So these are some of the other investment routes which have not been so popular. The reason being that some of them are actually sort of donations, like the 250,000 euros. And others, such as the 500,000 euros for a Portuguese company, also encompass creating permanent jobs in Portugal. So it has all, they are available. We have clients who have done that, but they also have other kinds of responsibilities. If anyone is interested, I can also go into those more specifically. Next slide, please. I would also like to point out, this is something that someone addressed with me the other day, which I don't think many people know, which is people can invest into the golden visa investor through a Portuguese company, which is not the investment that I mentioned before, but it's a Portuguese company that then can be used by the investor to undertake business activity. So this is something that it may also be interesting. Next slide, please. These are some key features of the Golden Visa program, which I just mentioned. The investment has to be kept for the period of 5 years. And when the 5 years are completed, the client can then apply for citizenship. Also, some changes on the citizenship application have been approved, or I think because of the delays on the visa applications. And so people can now apply for the Golden Visa, as in the past was from the date of the Golden Visa card or the visa date, now is from the moment that the client made the visa application. Next slide, please. Yes, and basically this is it. I rushed a bit because I don't think we have much time, but if anyone has any questions, would like to send me an email, I'm available. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katarina. That's really kind. An excellent presentation and a very good overview. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, we will give Katarina's contact details again during the question and answer session. So you'll have her details directly again very shortly. But in the meantime, that was a great overview. As you can see, changes are coming through all the time. The Portuguese government is very focused on sorting this out and encouraging new investors and new residents into Portugal. So on that note, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. This is Michael Maxwell from Portugal Panorama, who is going to talk to us about how investments work in Portugal, and particularly what sort of things Portugal Panorama is doing, which is his flagship fund at the moment. Michael, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Christina. Lovely to be here. So Portugal Panorama was set up by combining a whole lot of experience and contacts and partners and knowledge in the golden visa space. So I actually advised on the very first golden visa fund set up back in 2017-18. You know, back then, the whole golden visa program was all directed to real estate. I had a meeting in Lisbon where it became apparent to me that funds could be used in an interesting way. No one was touching funds back then because the headline was put money into Portuguese venture capital fund in 2017. Why would you do that? But when I looked into the laws, it said that what the fund needs to do is finance Portuguese companies through a mix of debt and equity, but it didn't stipulate what those companies needed to do. So I thought, well, if we've got a fund that's financing companies doing real estate, we'll have a real estate fund in a venture capital wrapper, meaning it's golden visa eligible. And I got a legal opinion on that from my colleagues at DCAR. I was with the group at the time. I flew off to Istanbul and I met a client of mine, and together we launched the first golden visa fund. And that's led to the boom today of over 50 funds in the market. And I think it's important to say that there are funds that are pure investment funds that can stand on their own feet as a solid investment, where the visa is the bonus, and funds which is a golden visa product first, and then the investment secondary to that. Okay, I think ourselves, Alex as well, with Vida, we're very much focused on number one, it's got to be a solid investment. Okay, there's no gimmicks like buyback guarantees or receiving part of the money up front. It's absolutely structured on the fundamentals of what you'd expect a good investment to be, which is a solid team, solid track record with good diversification. And through this whole journey of then setting up the first fund, launching a fund manager in Portugal, leading the capital raise on an investment platform, over the last couple of years, we raised around 120 million euros, all golden visa money. I've really got a good understanding of the space, and myself and my team, we thought, well, let's design quite the ideal golden visa product. And we picked up that most investors tend to split their capital between 2 or 3 funds. And we thought, well, let's design the first fund where investors don't need to split. So we've brought to market Portugal Panorama. Panorama definition meaning that broad view. It gives you full access and full vision into Portugal. And it's actually Portugal's first co-investment fund. If you could move on to the next slide, please. And it's about aligning our history in Portugal, our knowledge of exceptional partnerships and investments to the benefit of our investors that are coming in. If you could move on to the next slide. And what we've done is we've identified 3 areas in Portugal, which would be accommodation, mainly hospitality, agriculture, as well as renewable energy. Okay. And the aim there is to invest into these areas chosen specifically because they're areas where Portugal has fantastic track record, where Portugal has a bit of a competitive advantage. Okay. Where Portugal, These are areas that are strategically important to the economy, okay, and where you're seeing a good mix of private and public initiatives and capital going in. Having done that, we then looked at it and thought, well, who are the leading fund managers in this space over the last 10 years? And we don't mean golden visa fund managers. We mean guys that have been here long before the golden visa existed. They've seen the good, they've seen the bad, and they invest family office money, institutional money, as well as golden visa money. And then that was very important. And we approached them saying, we're setting up a fund. We would like to co-invest with your funds in these specific areas, not into them, because that would be a double layer of cost, but rather into the same deals that your fund invests into and what they look at. So these external fund managers bring a whole lot of knowledge, extensive investment teams that source deals, analyze deals, run due diligence on deals. They will invest into those deals. They then present the exact same deal to myself and my team. We double check their work, and if we like it, we go ahead. And as much as I love Portugal, I'm incredibly happy to live here. It's a fantastic place. The reality is it's a limited economy. It's a small country. So if you're able to diversify outside of the country, you're definitely better off for it. And we're looking at international private equity opportunities in jurisdictions such as the UK, Switzerland, and the US. So the aim of it is to give people access to the best of Portugal in a co-investment position, as well as a bit of cream on top, leading international private equity opportunities. If you could move on to the next slide, please. And our partners, for example, to show you their strength in renewable energy would be Blue Crow. They've been around for 14 years. They've got over 600 million euros under management. They've averaged 17.5% portfolio return across the time that they've been in operation. So when it comes to renewable energy investments, our fund co-invests with their renewable energy fund, all right? Once again, they've got the team with a track record of sourcing deals, analyzing deals. There's a lot of due diligence. I mean, groups like Blue Crow, they'll look at 300 deals before they invest in one. Okay, and there's a lot of work involved in that, and the benefit this fund brings to investors is that each investment is always double checked. First by the partner co-investing fund manager like Blue Crow, and then by ourselves. Okay, so it's very unlikely that anything of a poor quality will make it through this process, and that double layer of governance is extremely important. If you could please move on. In agriculture, in principle, we're co-investing with ActiveCap, a wonderful team, a lot of international experience. ActiveCap is relatively new, but the team behind it have been around for a while in the UK and the US. They've got wonderful CVs and a good track record. So they've currently got about 100 million euros under management, which, for the UK is a small drop in a big ocean, but for a place like Portugal, that's quite substantial. Most of that 100 million is not golden visa money. It's institutional, it's family office money, and they've performed very well for that. They've averaged a 16% portfolio return over that time. And in agriculture, I know they're looking at the moment at a couple of avocado farming opportunities, but in a much more sustainable way. There's been a huge growth of interest in avocados globally. Unfortunately, it's very water intensive, and there are a couple of leading companies in Portugal that have mastered the art of producing avocados of quality and in quantity, but with a lot less impact on the environment. And then that sort of certainly piqued their interest. Could please move on. The accommodation or touristic aspect of the fund is in co-investment with Estoril 8023 and their Hotel Invest Fund. Backing that business are two gentlemen called Luís Godinho Lopes and Pedro Mendes Leal. They're behind some of Portugal's most iconic hotels. They're up with the top names in hospitality here, but they were the brains behind Estoril Sol, Atlântico Residences, the Bairro Alto Hotel, as well as Intercontinental in Porto and Estoril. In their current portfolio, they've got 5 hotels. All of them are operating. All of them are 5 stars. The Valverde hotels, they've been cleaning up in all of the international awards for boutique hotels. And importantly, they don't actually own the real estate. They have 30-year operations contracts for these hotels, okay? And the plan here is to grow that portfolio to about 12 hotels, all right? Most hotels in Portugal are family-owned. It's a very fragmented ownership structure. They're consolidating the best of those under their brand and guidance, growing it to about 12 hotels where the exit strategies, they're looking at either an IPO or a private equity family office deal. Personally, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Luís and Pedro buy the business back at the end of it. They've certainly got the capital and know how to do that. Okay, so we're very comfortable with their exit strategy. If you could move on, please. And we're closing off an agreement with London Capital for the international private equity allocation. This is a fantastic group. They've been around for over 30 years, a good few billion euros under management. And we're in discussion with them to put together some certainly top-end international private equity opportunities with a diverse array of options, some focusing on dividends, some focusing on capital growth. So it's good balance within the portfolio. And it's been a pleasure working with them so far. Around 30 to 35% of the capital we're able to raise will be allocated outside of Portugal under the watchful eye of London Capital. We could move on. So our fund manager is Fundbox, and I've worked with them now for 4 years. They were founded back in 2005. They're big for Portuguese standards. They've got 500 million euros under management. And their chairman, Roy Alpilhão, is one of the big names in investment in Portugal. He lectures on the subject at the university, at the top business school. And it's been a pleasure working with him so far. We've got a great understanding, and it's incredibly important for investors looking at this that you're dealing with a fund manager with track record, with risk, and this is a 500 million euro business that's got over 30, that's been running for well over 20 years. They're not going to put their reputation on the line for the sake of a bad investment. And the fund manager has full fiduciary responsibility for these funds. They have the ultimate yes or no decision-making ability. As a fund advisor, we can merely recommend and suggest and come up with a general structure. But we're very reliant on Fundbox and their expertise to double check every investment that our co-investment partners are passing through to us. Okay. But also to double check every investor coming into the fund to make sure that there are no bad apples coming to the structure. Okay. And that's really, really very important. If you could please move on. So the full team involved would be ourselves, Portugal Panorama, as the fund advisor and founding unit holder. So we're the first people to invest in the fund. We designed the structure, we came up with a concept, and we're helping bring it to market and raise awareness. Fundbox is our fund manager, as I said. CMS, the international law firm, put together all of our legal and tax framework, as well as our regulations. Bison Bank is our custodian, and we're all under the watchful eye of CMVM, our regulator, and Mazars, our auditor. Okay, so it's a top of the class team. We've really looked at the structure closely to give investors some peace of mind. And at the moment, from what's coming in, the majority of investors are American and Turkish, and in third place are British passport holders, actually. Okay, so we're resonating in those markets, which is good to see. Next, please. But what the fund's really about is privilege and convenience. It gives you very privileged and convenient access into the best of Portugal, into key areas of the economy, the leading players within those areas, all double-checked by Fundbox. And on top of that, some wonderful international private equity opportunities in more than one jurisdiction. Okay, so diversification. And for us, my background is in tax, working for an international firm of lawyers and accountants. And perhaps that makes us inherently conservative. We want to sleep well at night, and we certainly want our investors to enjoy the same. Okay, so we're aligning with the best in core areas of Portugal, not limiting ourselves to Portugal as much as we love it. We believe the international private equity pipeline outside of Portugal is incredibly interesting and well worth looking at. Next, please. And we've worked really hard in trying to put the whole ecosystem that this fund is able to bring to the table into one image, and that's what's coming up. Okay, there is a lot of added value within the structure. I mean, you're dealing with 5 leading players across all of us. We've been around for 30 odd years, with over 8 billion euros under management. Okay, so it's a very comprehensive offering. If you could move on to the next slide, and I'll try to summarize that within an image. So this is the inner core of the layer. That's ourselves in the middle. We've initiated the fund. We've identified your core areas to invest into. Within those areas, we've then identified your leading players to co-invest with. If you could move on to the next slide. And that would be your Blue Crows, your Active Caps, your London Capitals. As I said, these are groups with fantastic track record, extensive investment teams. They will source deals, run due diligence on them, number one, analyze them, negotiate them, invest in them themselves, present the exact same deal to our team. If you could move on to the next slide. That would be Fundbox, Bison Bank, and Mazars. We all double check their work, okay? And when we're satisfied with it, we co-invest with them, okay? And of course, we're all under the watchful eye of CMVM, our regulator. If you could move on to the next slide. So if you take a step back, there's a lot of added value here. You know, this fund really gives you access into multiple facets of Portugal with strong governance. And strategically, we're limiting the allocation to any one investment of, say, 10 to 15%. Okay, so in the unlikely event that one component of the fund doesn't work out, you know, it's not going to sink the whole portfolio because it's extensive diversification. Similarly, we don't only rely on tourism. So, you know, if there's another COVID type of event, we've got agriculture and renewable energy and other areas to fall into. In the agricultural space, if there's a severe drought or plague or some natural disaster, well, we've got private equity, renewable energy, and hospitality to fall into as well. So we feel we've got, you know, most bases covered. Risk mitigations at the core of what we do, especially knowing a golden visa investor, a lot of what they're doing while they're looking at this sort of thing is to mitigate risk. It's almost like an insurance policy. So the last thing you want to do is put their visa at risk, or number two, pull them into an investment which where potentially, you know, they're not as protected as they'd like to be, you know, which is why for us, it's incredibly important, you know, not to offer things like, you know, buyback guarantees that aren't really guarantees. You know, they're not backed by a bank or paying fees up front or anything like that. I mean, this has to, number one, be a solid investment of an international standard. You don't want to be a golden visa investment. And number two, the golden visa should be the bonus. Onto the last slide, please. So we've got 24 months to raise 60 million euros. At the moment, the rate we're going, I anticipate will be there in about a year and a half, so 18 months. Our minimum take-on amount's 100,000. What we're seeing is most investors are coming in at about 300,000. They're using the fund almost as the foundation to their greater golden visa strategy because of the diversification it gives them. Their only out-of-pocket cost is a one-off subscription fee, which includes a non-refundable KYC fee if they fail. If they pass the KYC, that amount's refunded. The management fees are pretty lean, 1.5%. And then we're entitled to 20% of profits with a 5% preferred return in favor of investors. Okay, the target return of the fund is conservative. That would be a net 8%. And I say conservative, where if you look at your Active Caps and Blue Crows, they've been averaging north of 15%. Similarly, the same thing with other groups. Okay, so we'd rather underpromise and overdeliver, of course, than have things the other way around. Next slide, please. And that's us in a very quick nutshell. We're a team of immense experience in Portugal. We've been here from day one, not only in the golden visa space, but before that. And we've leveraged that network to the advantage of our investors in a way that mitigates risk, has double layers of governance, and gives extensive diversification. And yeah, I'm here and happy to, you know, share my experiences of what I've gone through in Portugal for those that are interested, and of course any further information on the fund.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Michael. Much appreciated. Very good overview and very interesting explanation about the various investments you're handling in Portugal under Portugal Panorama. And again, we'll give your full contact details again at the end so people can get in touch with you. Plus, we've got lots of good questions coming in, I have to say. Right. Our final speaker, although with a lot of interesting things to say, is our friend and chamber member, Alex Anona, who's a partner in Vida Capital. Now, Alex, you're going to tell us about Vida Capital, what the fund is doing. I know you've got a lovely video as well, which will cheer people up on this beautiful sunny day. And tell us a little bit now, Alex, about the Vida Capital Fund and the sort of hotels, distressed hotels you're working on and what you've got in the pipeline. And also, I know that Vida Capital, your fund is Golden Visa compliant, although that's an added bonus to a solid investment return already. Alex, please go ahead. Next slide.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Christina. So pleasure to have you on this call, and thank you to all the other speakers as well for your presentations thus far. Today I'll be presenting to you Vida, of which I'm a founding partner. Vida is a hospitality growth fund, meaning it's a fund that focuses on turnaround of existing operating distressed hotels. What we've decided to do is actually start with a short video to give a quick sense of shed a bit more light on Portugal and the Golden Visa program, and we'll then continue with a bit more of an in-depth presentation. So if we can just move to the video, please.
I was hoping the sound will catch up.
Affordability. Explore Portugal's treasures without breaking the bank. From accommodation to dining, Portugal offers affordability without compromising quality. Quality of education and healthcare. Experience top-tier education and healthcare systems, including accessible public services that prioritize the well-being of all residents. Tax efficiency. Discover a tax-efficient environment where gifts, inheritances, and wealth are not taxed. International appeal. Engage with a welcoming community proficient in English, making Portugal an accessible and inviting destination for visitors and expatriates alike. Are you dreaming of European citizenship? Portugal's Golden Visa program offers an exclusive pathway for you and your family. Portugal's Golden Visa program stands out as the premier residency by investment opportunity in Europe. Here's why. No relocation required. Gain citizenship without the need for immediate relocation. Enjoy the flexibility of maintaining your current lifestyle while embarking on your journey to European citizenship. Minimal stay requirements. Accessing citizenship is streamlined with minimal stay requirements. Spend just 14 days every 2 years, allowing you to manage your time effortlessly. Tax efficiency. Experience the Golden Visa program without tax implications. Portugal's tourism sector, pivotal to its economic vitality, showcases one of Europe's fastest post-pandemic recoveries, highlighting its resilience and growth. This swift rebound underscores the sector's lasting appeal and strong potential. The allure of the Algarve's beaches to Sintra's ancient charm continues to draw global visitors, presenting unmatched investment opportunities. Join us in shaping the future of hospitality in Portugal. Invest in Portugal, and let us together unlock the door to a world of opportunities.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. So again, getting back to Vida specifically. So Vida, it's a 50 million euro fund with a fund life cycle of 7 years, meaning that's the scope of horizon of the investment. The advantage with Vida is that it's a fund that will be closing to subscription, meaning to fundraising in February, which means that it will be one of the first funds to be able to actually liquidate. So the investors will obviously need to be in the fund for 5 years until they can apply for citizenship. But this means that basically we'll have kind of the last batch coming in February, meaning that we may actually be able to liquidate even before the 7-year life cycle. In terms of return, we're targeting about 10.5% IRR, which includes also some dividends, which we'll see in a later slide, which means basically the total return, the estimate is to double the investor's capital over the course of 7 years. There's a 500,000 euro minimum investment in order to qualify for Golden Visa, as we've mentioned before. And the focus of the fund, again, is to focus on more of a service department's market and really focus on basically buying off-market distressed or underperforming hotels that we typically buy at 30-40% discount for market value. We then do a high-end refurbishment, usually with very minimal impact. So we do no demolition, very minimal construction, nothing that requires permitting to minimize risk. We turn around the hotel, We then optimize it, run it for some time, stabilize it, and eventually turn it around. So think about it like a private equity turnaround for distressed hotels. Next slide, please. We believe that our success is at acquisition. The reason is that we're really going for a very kind of low risk investment strategy. And we do this by a few things. First of all, we're, again, as I said before, only buying significantly discounted from market value. That's the first thing, to make sure that even if, let's say, another COVID comes in and it does impact, let's say, the operating profits during 1 or 2 years, we're not going to be subject to fluctuations of the market, let's say. Our hotels will be in the bank. We'll still have a lot of appreciation that can protect and hedge any risk that can happen. Robust operating yield. We're looking at buying hotels where we can get between 8 to 10% operating yield on average during the whole period of the investment. And the last thing is strategic geographical location. We're always looking at hotels that are not in ultra premium areas, but in areas that have already a lot of demand for tourism, but significant appreciation potential during the years of the hold. Next. So this slide is really to show a little bit of before and after. The intention for us is for people to understand. You can see left and right, there's a significant difference in how the place feels. But really, if you look at it, there's no infrastructural change. There's no structural change. It's very kind of light intervention. But these light interventions, which typically only last, let's say, 6 to 18 months between buying, let's say, and reopening, allow us to reposition a lot of mostly family-run hotels in Portugal that are, let's say, selling a room at 120 to be able to bring them to 350 rather rapidly and being able to create a lot of value. Next. This is a bit of information about the hospitality market in Portugal. As a lot of you may have heard, Portugal has been booming, especially with COVID. A lot of people from all over, including the UK, has been spending more time there as either as tourists or relocating there. And what this is showing basically is that Portugal has been one of the strongest markets in Europe in terms of recovery from pre-COVID. It has been actually the first country to get back to pre-COVID-19 numbers in terms of number of arrivals into the country, and has since then far exceeded it. Next. This is also showing the prices, the evolution of prices for branded residents. The graph, which is a bit small for the screen, starts in 2019. You can see that even through the thick of COVID, things kept on either being stabilized or growing. And that's really showing the resilience, basically, of the hospitality and tourism market in Portugal. Next. So this is a bit of a simulation of the cash flows for investors. So the way that you can see it is very simple. Ultimately, there's an initial investment of 500,000 euros that is made today. Typically in year one, we're not foreseeing any returns because it's a year where we are imagining that we will still be finalizing our investments and finalizing either the refurbishments or the opening and soft opening of the projects. However, from year two onwards, we are foreseeing to have profits at the hotel levels. And so with that, we're planning to pay a 4% dividend. So there is actually cash flow coming in from year two onwards, projected at 4%, therefore 20,000 euros each year up until liquidation. When we get to exit year, we'll be then paying back all of the investors, their principal, and then an additional amount, which we're projecting to be 380,000, totaling 1 million of return between the principal and the dividends. Next slide, please. This is the first project that we have closed. It's a 54 villa resort in the Algarve. It's the Algarve is the southern coast of Portugal, for those who don't know. This is only an hour 50 drive from Lisbon. It has its own international airport, which has flights now starting from New York to Faro, which is just 20 minutes away. This project has all amenities of a 5-star resort. Also happens to be a beachfront resort, meaning all of the villas have full sea view. We have our own little private access to the beach. It's a really very special project. Next slide, please. Here you're going to see on the top part more photos of Massana, this project. And on the bottom part, you see another project that we have, which is in Porto, which is called Riviera. There we bought 2 hotels, also distressed from a family that had to get out of the deal. All of these are bought from bankruptcies, from non-performing portfolios from banks. The bottom one, so it's 2 hotels we bought in merge. They have a rooftop pool and restaurant on the top floor. They have a restaurant and spa on the bottom floor and apartment hotel units in the middle. As you can see, they have a little kitchenette, so it's more like an apart hotel concept. Next slide, please. And a bit more information about the team. So very briefly, My focus very much on hospitality. Previously, I was part of a group. Previously, I set up an investment bank, basically doing expansion for hospitality groups. Previously to this, I was vice president of expansion for a group called Selena, which is a hospitality company that started in Panama, that eventually we moved to headquarters in London. Before what we IPO'd the company, we have developed 130 hotels across the world in close to 30 countries, all under the same brand. It was the fastest hospitality growth to date of any hospitality company. Maria, my business partner, tax lawyer, was with Cuatro Casas and Freshfields in M&A tax, doing M&A tax law in London, then moved with Macquarie and Barclays, went on to then set up her own fund with the ex-managing director from Goldman Sachs. She's now overseeing everything to do with tax, legal, and structuring. Franco, our other partner, was managing a multi-billion-dollar portfolio of infrastructure in China, then moved to Mexico, set up a number of sustainability financing platforms, funds, very successful ones, and is now overseeing all of the sustainability strategy of the fund. Jose Covas, our chief investment officer, has over 30 years of experience in valuations in the hospitality world in Spain and Portugal, is recognized as the one of top experts in the country, also happens to be a professor in 4 of the top universities and a president of a number of societies and foundations around hospitality. Through him, we have a lot of access to deal flow for distressed deals from big families, from banks, from family offices, non-performing portfolios, etc. On the bottom, you have just some of the people who are more in charge of the executive management team, which is a larger team. But again, we've picked just those to show just a few of them. Next slide, please. On the hospitality management side, very important. This is a team that has been basically was working in Starwood and Marriott for many years. After that, set up basically Blue Shift. They are very well known for doing turnaround of distressed hotels in Portugal. They've done it in a number of projects, all categories of hotel across the country, and have been also chosen by Hyatt as the master franchisees for all of Spain and Portugal. Next slide, please. Sustainability, we believe we're doing things right by a few things. First of all, giving a second life to projects that are otherwise either not alive or barely so. So revitalizing existing operating hotels. Integration, we're always looking at maximizing the integration of renewable energies. And finally, it's all about local sourcing. So we design ourselves and custom build our own furniture, which we exclusively craft in Portugal. And on the hospitality operating side, we're always looking at maximizing the locally sourced aspect of everything in the operation. Next slide. This is a bit more information about the Golden Visa, but again, for the sake of time, I'm just going to skip this slide. And that's basically it. So thank you all for your attention. And again, more than happy to answer any questions. And please get in touch if you would like to contact directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex. Just to say, we're now going to do about 5 minutes of questions and answers. So next slide, please. Here are the full contact details of all our speakers. And as our visitors can see, we've been answering questions in the Q&A box. Thank you to our panelists for answering. But we also got lots of very good questions in advance from many of you visitors. So I'm just going to ask our panelists a few of these questions. And then we will finish in about 5 minutes time. And as I said, this whole webinar plus all the presentations will be sent to you in the next hour or two, because we've got all your emails for those of you who registered. So first question, I'd like to ask, it's clear from the questions we got from our audience in advance that there is still some confusion around the different types of visas. So I would like to ask Katerina, who's our sort of in-house expert on the different sorts of visas. Katerina, if you get a D7 visa, i.e. you're going to move permanently to Portugal, does that automatically create tax residency in Portugal?
Yes.
So you would therefore have to apply for the NHR regime?
So basically, as I said throughout the presentation, the only visa that does not implicate full-time residency and tax residency is the Golden Visa. All of the other visas, including the D7 visa, really mean that clients need to relocate to Portugal and they will become tax resident in Portugal. Yes, and they can apply for the current NHR.
Right, exactly. Okay. But in contrast, if you're a British resident living in the UK and you're thinking of buying a second home in Portugal, in the Algarve or Lisbon or wherever it might be, you have no restrictions on buying that house. You can buy whatever house you want at any price you want. But as a British passport holder living in the UK, you are limited to visiting your property for only 90 days every 6 months. That's correct.
That's correct. Those are the Schengen area rules. And so, yes, that's it, really. And so the reality is that we have had UK nationals and residents who have applied for the golden visa because they wanted to have an extended stay in Portugal, let's say.
Exactly, yes. So we're finding a lot of people, British passport holders, i.e. we're outside Europe now, British passport holders with second homes in Portugal. They want to spend more time there than they're currently allowed to do. At the moment, they can only spend 90 days every 6 months in their second home in Portugal. So we are very well aware that quite a lot of British British passport holders with properties in Portugal are investing in the golden visa in order to be able to spend as much time as they want in their Portuguese second homes and also travel freely throughout Schengen countries if they should wish to. So that is very much an unexpected result, I think, of the UK's exit from Europe. Now, I've got one other question for Caterina. Yes, is the NHR regime still open to applicants for a D7 visa who applied before 31st of December 2023? And as you said in your presentation, yes, under certain conditions.
Correct. And so what I would suggest is anyone interested probably would make sense to either talk to me or anyone who knows the regime well, because at the end of the day, and also going back to what is my experience, although we provide general information on these webinars, it's really very important to check each specific situation carefully. But yes, under the conditions that I set out on the throughout the webinar, anyone who had a residency permit in 2023 can still apply for the NHR until the end of this year.
Exactly. Okay. And another question we had from our audience was asking, my wife and I have owned a property in Portugal for many years, but we use it solely for holidays until now. Would having a second home for holidays in Portugal help us in getting permanent resident status in Portugal? The answer is yes, but they've still got to apply for a visa.
Correct. That is exactly correct. What it does is, if we're talking about a couple that is retired, they already comply with what, well, I would say for any visa, which is the, whoever is applying for a visa needs to evidence that they have accommodation. And so if they have a property in Portugal, that criteria is already complied with. So it does make things easier. It doesn't mean that they need to look into what specific visa applies to them and really be sure that we are applying for the correct visa.
Okay. Now I can see, ladies and gentlemen, lots of our viewers are actually having big discussions with Michael Maxwell and Alex on the question and answer boxes. So please feel free to talk directly to Michael and Alex with your questions, and they're answering them as we go. But I'm going to ask Caterina a couple more questions that we had already from our audience. Caterina, because you are our overall tax in-house specialist here. Now, we've got a couple of questions about the time it's taking to process the visas, whether they're normal D7s, D2s visas or the golden visa. Now, one of our visitors asked us, it is over 2.5 years since we bought a golden visa qualifying property in Portugal back in November 21, when you could still buy a property and apply for the golden visa. And this couple completed their biometrics identification tests in April 2023. Caterina, when do you think they might expect their golden visa residency cards? Although the new government has made lots of concessions to that, haven't they?
Yes. So are we talking about citizenship or the visa cards?
He wants a golden visa residency.
Correct. So I would say the specific answer to that question really depends on where they filed their biometrics, because biometrics can be done in many different immigration offices throughout Portugal, and each office has different delays. And so, for example, to give a very brief overview, Porto is quite quick at the moment. I would say 2 to 3 months. Coimbra is also quick, but they are not progressing. They are not processing the applications sequentially, so it's difficult to say. Madeira, we have many clients who applied in Madeira. They are processing applications, biometrics filed November 2023. Lisbon is very slow. And unfortunately, Algarve, which was a place where that worked very well, is a bit of a question mark, what's happening there. So it really depends on that.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that we also had a question from one of our audience asking if there are any businesses in Portugal that specialize in teaching foreigners how to invest and do business in Portugal. Yeah. I discussed this with the panel earlier. And I think, Michael, do you want to give your view on that? I mean, I don't think anybody can teach you how to do a business, but there are various companies that can ensure you have a soft landing, like Descartes, or advisors like yourself. Perhaps could you elaborate a bit around that for us?
Yeah, so it's exactly that. Portugal is a small world. People are generally connected, and if you're working with locals, they'll be able to help accelerate your learning process and open the right sort of doors for you and get you in front of the right people. And companies like Descartes do exactly that. They'll provide a soft landing, bring you up to speed in terms of all of the bureaucracy, what you need to operate in Portugal, assist with any recruitment you may need and any structuring. But similarly, I'm sure anyone on this panel would be happy to hear out and make introductions where appropriate. I think we've all been, at least myself and Alex, received with open arms to Portugal, been easy to adapt, and we generally like to provide the same welcome to other people coming in and share what we've learned along the way of our own journey.
Well, I completely agree with that. I would like to say, ladies and gentlemen, that we have reached the end of our time slot. We've even overrun by 7 minutes, but I think the quality of the questions we've had from our audience today has been exceptional. I can see you're all a very engaged audience with a lot of questions to ask and very serious about moving to Portugal. And I think hopefully you feel that we've given you some excellent information from our speakers, Michael, Caterina and Alex, who I think have overall given you a very interesting flavour of what's going on in Portugal today. And I'm hoping that many of you watching will come and see us at Moving to Portugal in London on the 17th of October. Email us or go to movingtoportugal.org.uk to see more. And otherwise, it only really remains for me to thank our panelists and speakers very much indeed. A big thank you to Caterina Sardinha from Descartes, Michael Maxwell from Portugal Panorama, and our friend Alex Anona from VidaCap. Feel free to contact them directly. I think we've answered almost all the questions. And we will send you the presentations very shortly. But it remains only for me to thank everybody here and my wonderful chamber team for making this happen. Thank you and goodbye from London on a very hot June day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.